Think about how big time is, both before and after you exist. Your life takes up only a tiny moment in the huge calendar of the universe. The universe has been around for billions of years and will keep going for billions more. Your time here is just a quick flash of being awake in a universe that doesn't care either way. The idea that we will be forgotten isn't meant to scare us, but to free us from worries we don't need. It reminds us to focus on what really matters in the short time we have. Throughout human history, countless people have lived, loved, and disappeared without leaving any trace. Even the greatest kingdoms and most amazing achievements eventually fade and are forgotten. Our modern obsession with being remembered blinds us to a basic truth about life. Everything is temporary, including memory itself. The erosion of memory. Time wears away all memory like waves slowly turning mountains into sand. This process is as natural as the changing seasons or the movement of stars across the night sky. Think about how the most famous people from just 500 years ago are only known by a tiny fraction of people today. Their achievements, which once seemed life-changing, have been reduced to short notes in history books that are rarely read. The names that filled people's minds for centuries, Alexander, Caesar, Cleopatra, are now just characters in stories, without their true nature and complexity. We know almost nothing about their inner lives, their doubts, their quiet moments of thinking. Think about how many billions of people have lived and died, their names and stories completely lost to history. Each one had dreams, fears, loved ones, and a unique way of seeing the world, all now gone without a trace. Even the pharaohs, who built monuments specifically designed to make sure they would be remembered forever, are mostly forgotten as individuals. We may know their titles and see their tombs, but their personalities and daily struggles have disappeared like morning dew. Your great-grandchildren might remember your name, or maybe show your photograph. But what about 10 generations from now, when your DNA will be so weak it will barely exist in your descendants? The memories of you will fade like footprints on a beach when the tide comes in, slowly becoming smoother until nothing is left. This isn't sad, but the natural order of things, the way the universe keeps its balance. Even digital records, which we think might preserve us forever, will eventually become broken or unreadable as technologies change. Or maybe they will simply be ignored, lost in the huge ocean of human information that has piled up. The liberation of insignificance. There is deep freedom in accepting that you don't matter much in the grand scheme of things. This realization removes the burden of having to achieve something huge just to justify your existence. When you understand that you will be forgotten, you can stop living for others' approval or history's judgment. You become free from the weight of legacy that has crushed so many souls throughout human history. You become free to live honestly in the present moment, focusing on the quality of your experiences rather than their impact on history. This shift in how you see things changes how you measure the value of your days on Earth. This isn't giving up on meaning, but freedom from the prison of legacy that modern society has built around us. It's permission to live for the experience of living itself, not for recording it or being remembered. The weight of forever lifts from your shoulders when you accept that your name will eventually disappear from human memory. You no longer need to carve your identity into the fabric of history to prove your existence matters. What stays important is how you experience your life, the quality of your awareness during your brief time here. The love you give and receive becomes valuable for its own sake, not as part of some eternal record book. Think about how many people throughout history have given up their happiness and true desires just to be remembered. They lived not for themselves, but for an imagined future audience that would never truly know them. By accepting that being forgotten is unavoidable, you take back ownership of your limited time. You can finally ask what truly brings you joy, not what will impress people in the future. This way of thinking lets you find meaning in small moments: a conversation with a friend, the taste of food, the feeling of sunlight on your skin. These experiences need no reason beyond themselves. They aren't steps towards some greater goal, but complete and perfect in their temporary existence, just as you are. The beauty of a sunset isn't lessened because it will soon be gone. Maybe its shortness is what makes it precious. The democracy of oblivion. Being forgotten is the great equalizer, the final democracy that waits for us all. Kings and beggars, geniuses and ordinary people all share this final fate of being forgotten. There's something deeply comforting in this universal journey toward being erased that awaits every human being who has ever lived. It connects us across time and space in a shared human condition. The pharaoh who ordered the Great Pyramid to be built and the slave who built it are equally forgotten as individuals today. Their bones are equally dust, their voices equally silent. The most powerful emperor and the most humble farmer from 2,000 years ago now exist in the same state. As faded echoes at best, complete nobodies at worst. Their differences, which seemed so huge and important during their lives, have been erased by the passage of time. Even those rare people whose names have survived, Socrates, Buddha, Confucius, exist now mainly as symbols and ideas, not as the complex human beings they once were. The actual people have been replaced by cultural ideas that serve our current needs. We know almost nothing about their daily lives, their personal quirks, or the sound of their laughter. The essence of who they really were has been lost to time, just as yours will be. Understanding this shared destiny can break down the artificial walls we create between ourselves and others. Status, wealth, fame, all these differences that seem so important now will eventually mean nothing. When you truly understand that both you and your enemies will be equally forgotten, many conflicts lose their seeming importance. What remains is the quality of awareness you experience during your brief time in existence. The illusion of permanence. We build monuments of stone, write books, create art, all in an unconscious rebellion against our temporary nature. These efforts to achieve immortality show our deep discomfort with the truth of our shortness. Think about the ancient library of Alexandria, once the greatest collection of human knowledge in the world. It burned, and countless irreplaceable works were lost forever, their authors doubly erased from memory. Modern digital archives seem more permanent, but they too can be destroyed by technological obsolescence and decay. How many early websites have already disappeared, their creators' digital legacies erased? Even our most lasting creations are temporary against the vast backdrop of cosmic time. The pyramids themselves will eventually crumble to dust, as will all human achievements. This illusion of permanence causes us to invest huge amounts of energy in projects that future generations may neither appreciate nor remember. We sacrifice present joy for a legacy that will inevitably fade like morning mist. When you accept that nothing you create will last forever, you can create for the joy of creation itself. You can build sandcastles with the full knowledge that the tide will come, and find beauty in that process. The weight of significance. The belief that we must matter to the universe creates an unbearable mental burden. It demands that we justify our existence through achievement, recognition, and lasting impact. This burden crushes many under the weight of constant inadequacy, feeling they haven't done enough to deserve being remembered. It turns life from an experience to be lived into a resume to be judged. Think about how many deathbed regrets focus not on failing to achieve greatness, but on missing simple moments of connection. Few regret not building bigger monuments to themselves as they face their final moments. The dying rarely wish they had worked harder to secure their legacy or gained more recognition from strangers. Instead, they wish they had spent more time with loved ones, expressed their feelings more openly. The paradox of significance is that by desperately pursuing it, we often sacrifice the very experiences that would make our lives meaningful. We trade being present for being prominent, connection for commemoration. When you release the need to matter to history, you can finally matter to yourself and those around you in the present. This is the true freedom that comes from accepting your eventual erasure from memory. The witness fallacy. We often believe that experiences only matter if they are witnessed and remembered by others. This mistake leads us to document moments rather than fully living them, always performing for an imagined future audience. Think about how many people experience beautiful views through phone screens, more concerned with capturing than experiencing. The moment is sacrificed for a record that few will ever see, and eventually none will remember. The value of an experience doesn't depend on its documentation or being remembered by others. A moment of deep joy or connection doesn't become less real when it passes without record. The sunset remains beautiful whether or not it's photographed, and your experience of it is complete in itself. It doesn't need to be validated by future remembrance to have been worth experiencing. When you release the need for witnesses to your life, you can fully live in each moment as it comes. Your awareness becomes the enough and complete recipient of your experiences. This shift transforms ordinary moments into sacred ones, complete in themselves without need for outside validation. The bird's song needs no audience to be perfect, neither does your life. The memory paradox. Those who are most remembered by history are often those who cared least about being remembered. They were absorbed in their pursuits, fully present in their lives rather than obsessed with their legacy. Think about figures like Vincent van Gogh, who died believing himself a failure, his work unappreciated. He painted not for the future, but from an inner need, a drive to express his unique vision. The paradox extends to personal relationships as well, where those who most desperately want to be remembered are often forgotten first. It's authentic presence and genuine connection that creates lasting impressions, not the desire for them. The teacher who changed your life likely did so by being fully present and engaged, not by trying to make a permanent mark. They gave without expectation of return or recognition. True impact often comes as a side effect of being absorbed in meaningful activity, not as its goal. When you release the need to be remembered, you become free to pursue what truly matters to you. This authenticity is ironically what might make you memorable to those who know you, even as cosmic forgetting remains your final fate. But by then, it will no longer matter to you whether you're remembered or not. The continuous present. The human mind divides time into past, present, and future, but this is just a useful fiction. In reality, we only ever exist in an ever-moving present moment, with memory and anticipation as mental constructs. Our obsession with being remembered is really an attempt to extend our existence beyond this continuous present. It's a denial of the basic nature of time and consciousness. When you fully accept that you exist only in the present moment, being forgotten stops being threatening. If existence is only ever now, then what does it matter if your now is remembered in some future now? The quality of your consciousness in this moment becomes the only measure of your life's value. This realization transforms how you spend your precious attention and energy. Think about how much worry about legacy pulls us out of the present moment, where life actually happens. We sacrifice our only real existence now for an imagined future that we won't experience. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can finally arrive fully in the present moment. You can stop living as a character in a story to be told later and start living as a consciousness experiencing now. The burden of history? Think about how many people throughout time have been crushed by the weight of remembered expectations. Children of famous parents, successors to great leaders, all burdened by the shadow of what came before. Being remembered puts obligations on those who come after, creating prisons of expectation that can prevent authentic living. Maybe being forgotten is a gift we give to future generations, freeing them from the tyranny of our remembered greatness. Even on a personal level, being remembered too well by loved ones can become a burden to them. Too much grief keeps the living chained to memories, unable to move forward into new experiences. There's wisdom in cultures that practice limited mourning periods, acknowledging that life must continue for the living. The healthy integration of loss requires a partial forgetting, a gentle release of what once was. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you release others from the obligation to remember you. This is perhaps your final act of love, freeing those who survive you to live fully in their own present. You give them permission to remember you less as time moves forward, to allow your memory to gently fade as it naturally will. This release isn't abandonment, but a final gift of freedom. The cosmic perspective. From the view of cosmic time, all human history is just an eye blink, all human achievements momentary. The sun will eventually expand and swallow the earth, erasing all physical traces of human civilization. Even the most lasting monuments, the most famous names, will disappear completely as if they never existed. This isn't a negative view, but simply the reality of cosmic scales. The universe, with its billions of galaxies and trillions of stars, continues regardless of whether humans record or remember their brief time here. Our species is unimaginably young in cosmic terms, likely to be extinct long before the universe reaches middle age. When you think about these vast timescales, individual legacy becomes almost comically insignificant. What does it matter if you're remembered for 100 years or 1,000 in the face of billions? This cosmic view doesn't lessen the value of your experiences, but places them in their true context. The universe doesn't need to remember you for your life to matter. The meaning of your existence isn't lessened by its temporary nature, just as the beauty of a flower isn't lessened by its brief blooming. The self-illusion lies in embracing your cosmic insignificance while finding deep meaning in your personal experience. The self-illusion. The very self that fears being forgotten is itself a temporary construction, constantly changing and not permanent. The you that exists today isn't the same you that existed 10 years ago or will exist 10 years from now. Your cells have replaced themselves, your memories have been changed, your beliefs and values have shifted. In a very real sense, your past selves have already been partially forgotten, even by you. We maintain an illusion of continuous selfhood through storytelling, telling ourselves stories about who we are. Yet these stories are selective, leaving out far more than they include about our actual experiences. Much of your own life has already been forgotten by you, lost to the natural limits of human memory. The self that fears being forgotten is already experiencing it continuously, moment by moment. By recognizing the fluid, constructed nature of selfhood, the fear of being forgotten loses much of its power. If there's no permanent self to be remembered, what exactly are you trying to preserve in memory? This recognition allows you to hold your identity more lightly, to stop clinging to a consistent story of self. You become free to reinvent yourself continually, released from the prison of your own previous definitions. The attention economy. Modern society has turned attention and remembrance into products, making them scarce resources to be bought and sold. Social media platforms make money from our fear of being forgotten, promising a kind of digital immortality. We measure our worth in likes, shares, and followers, as if these numbers could somehow protect us from being forgotten. This turning of memory into a product creates a frantic competition for a resource that's ultimately meaningless. Think about how much vital human energy is wasted on making sure we're visible and remembered rather than on living. The pursuit of viral moments and personal branding eats up countless hours that might be spent in direct experience. We trade the richness of unrecorded private experiences for the hollow validation of public documentation. The math seems clear. Better to be seen briefly than to live deeply without witnesses. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can drop out of this exhausting economy of attention. You take back your experiences as your own, rather than as content to be consumed by others. This is a revolutionary act in an age that measures human worth by numbers and reach. You declare your independence from the tyranny of being remembered, choosing depths over breadth of impact. The freedom of anonymity. Throughout history, many of the most deep and meaningful contributions have been made anonymously. Think about the unknown architects of ancient cathedrals, or the nameless authors of folktales that last today. These creators worked not for personal glory or remembrance, but for the work itself, or for ideals beyond themselves. Their anonymity gave them freedom from ego that allowed their work to speak for itself. There's a special kind of freedom in contributing without signature, in giving without recognition. The anonymous gift is perhaps the purest form of giving, untainted by the expectation of return or acknowledgement. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can approach this state of anonymous contribution during your lifetime. Your actions become valuable for their true worth, not as entries in the record of your remembrance. Think about how the need for recognition corrupts even our most noble impulses, turning generosity into self-promotion. When this need dissolves, all action becomes potentially sacred, worthwhile for its own sake. This shift leads to a life of greater authenticity and often, paradoxically, greater impact. The myth of originality. Our fear of being forgotten often shows up as a desperate search for originality, for a unique legacy. Yet true originality is largely a myth, as all human creation builds upon what came before. Every inventor, artist, and thinker stands on the shoulders of countless forgotten predecessors who made their work possible. Our contributions are less individual monuments than small additions to a vast collective effort. The most beloved stories, discoveries, and creations often appear multiple times independently across cultures. This suggests they come not from individual genius, but from common human experience and shared consciousness. Even when we believe we're being entirely original, we're actually channeling collective wisdom, remixing cultural inheritances. Our most personal insights often turn out to be universal, already discovered by others throughout time. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can release the exhausting pursuit of unprecedented originality. You become free to create from authentic impulse, rather than from the desire to stake a permanent claim. This acknowledgement of your place in the great continuity of human creation is deeply humbling and deeply freeing. You participate fully in the collective project of humanity without needing to plant your flag upon it. The quality of attention. The quality of your attention determines the quality of your life far more than how long you'll be remembered. A life of scattered attention, always reaching for more, is poor regardless of its legacy. On the other hand, a life lived with full presence and deep awareness is rich regardless of whether it leaves any trace. Maybe the only true wealth is the capacity for complete attention to your experience as it unfolds. Think about how often the pursuit of legacy draws our attention away from the present moment. We sacrifice the depth of now for an imagined breadth of impact across time. This trade rarely satisfies, as the present moment continually slips away unlived while the future promise of remembrance never quite arrives. The attention you give to securing your legacy is attention you can't give to living your life. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can redirect your precious attention to where it actually creates value. You can give yourself completely to your experiences without holding back to document or promote them. This full presence creates a quality of life that needs no outside validation or continuation in memory. It's complete in itself, needing nothing beyond the moment of its existence to justify its worth. The inheritance of forgetting. Each generation forgets most of what the previous generation knew, remembered, and valued. This natural process of forgetting is essential to cultural growth and renewal. Imagine if we remembered everything our ancestors did, believed every idea they held, maintained every practice they followed. We would be crushed under the piled-up weight of history, unable to find our own way forward. Forgetting isn't just unavoidable, but necessary, creating space for new ideas, practices, and values to emerge. It allows each generation to remake the world according to their present needs and understandings. Just as individual memory requires forgetting to work properly, collective memory requires it to stay vital and relevant. To be forgotten is to contribute to this necessary clearing away, this making of space. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you participate consciously in this vital process of cultural renewal. You released your grip on the future, allowing it to become what it needs to be rather than what you would preserve. This generosity toward the unborn is perhaps the greatest gift you can offer to the future. You give them the freedom to create their world without the burden of remembering yours. The intimacy of impermanence. There's a special closeness in experiences shared with the full awareness that they won't last. This is why sunset gatherings, last days before departures, and deathbed conversations often have such emotional intensity. The knowledge of coming separation fills the moment with a poignancy that more permanent arrangements rarely achieve. In acknowledging the temporary nature of an experience, we often access its deeper dimensions. Think about how the Japanese concept of mono no aware celebrates the beauty of shortness. Cherry blossoms are beloved precisely because they bloom briefly and fall, not despite this fact. Their shortness increases appreciation, creating a more refined, beautiful experience than permanent flowers could provide. The awareness of being short-lived creates a tender, bittersweet quality that enriches rather than lessens. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can bring this quality of awareness to your entire life. Each experience becomes more precious, more worthy of full attention, knowing it won't last. This isn't a sad recognition, but a deepening one, filling ordinary moments with extraordinary significance. You become more available to the strange miracle of existing at all, however briefly and forgettably. The currency of remembrance. In our culture, remembrance has become a form of money, a payment for actions we think are valuable. We offer it as reward and hold it back as punishment, assuming everyone wants it. You will be remembered for this can be either promise or threat, depending on the context. We speak of paying tribute, as if memory were a tax owed to those we think are worthy. This economy of remembrance creates wrong incentives, rewarding actions that attract attention rather than those that create genuine value. History remembers conquerors more than healers, the dramatic over the nurturing, the loud over the subtle. Our systems of remembrance often preserve exactly what we should move beyond: violence, domination, excess. Meanwhile, the quiet acts of compassion that keep human dignity going are largely unrecorded. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you free yourself from this distorted economy of action. Your choices can be guided by true value rather than their memorial potential. This freedom allows you to count among your most significant achievements things that no one else will ever know about. The private act of compassion becomes as meaningful as the public act of heroism. The fallacy of control. Our desire to be remembered represents a basic misunderstanding about control. We can't determine how or if future generations will remember us, no matter what we do. Those who are remembered are often remembered for reasons they wouldn't have chosen, sometimes in ways they would have hated. History reshapes us according to its own stories, beyond our control. Think about how figures like Vincent van Gogh or Franz Kafka became famous only after death, when they couldn't experience or direct it. Their attempt to control their legacy would have been useless, as is ours. Even those who carefully write autobiographies or set up foundations in their names can't determine how future generations will understand or remember them. The meanings of our lives aren't ours to fix permanently. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you release this illusion of control over your life after death. You acknowledge that how or whether you're remembered isn't yours to determine. This recognition returns you to what you actually can influence: the quality of your lived experience and your impact on those around you now. You take back control over what matters, your life as it's lived, not as it might be remembered. The ethics of presence. There's an ethical dimension to accepting that you will be forgotten, a moral clarity it brings to action. When remembrance is no longer the reward, genuine values can guide your choices more directly. Actions taken for their own rightness rather than for recognition often have a purer quality, unburdened by calculation. Maybe the most ethical action is that which would be chosen even if no one ever knew about it. Think about how many moral compromises are made in the pursuit of legacy or in the name of some greater future good. We justify present harms for imagined future benefits, sacrificing what is for what might be remembered. When you accept that you will be forgotten, this calculation shifts toward the immediate impact of your actions on real beings. The distant future can no longer be used to justify present cruelty or neglect. It measures worth not in potential memorial currency, but in immediate relief of suffering, creation of joy. By releasing your grip on future judgment, you become available to present ethical demands. You act not for history, but for the lived reality your actions create in this moment. The wisdom of uncertainty. True wisdom often begins with acknowledging what we can't know or control. The future reception of our lives falls directly into this category of basic uncertainty. We can't know who, if anyone, will remember us or what meaning they'll make of our existence. This uncertainty extends even to how we ourselves will be transformed by future experiences. The mind fights against this uncertainty, creating fantasies of future appreciation to comfort itself. We imagine future generations understanding us better than our peers do. Yet this imagined future audience is just a projection of our current desires for recognition, not a reality we can count on. The wisest approach is to hold these fantasies lightly, recognizing them as the mind's attempt to create certainty where none exists. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you embrace this basic uncertainty about your legacy. You acknowledge the limits of your knowledge and control, a recognition that paradoxically expands rather than shrinks your freedom. This wisdom of uncertainty allows you to act more decisively in the present, unburdened by calculations about future judgment. You become available to the surprise and wonder of an unpredictable life, rather than clinging to predetermined stories of remembrance. The poetry of passing. There's a touching beauty in things that don't last, a poetry in passing that permanent monuments can't achieve. Think about the sand mandala, carefully created grain by grain, then ceremonially destroyed upon completion. Its shortness isn't accidental, but essential to its meaning, symbolizing the passing nature of all things. The mandala's destruction isn't a tragedy, but the completion of its purpose. Our lives have this same potential for temporary poetry, complete not despite, but because of their temporary nature. The sand mandala of your existence doesn't need to last to have been worth creating in beautiful detail. Maybe your life achieves its fullest meaning precisely in its passing away, in its return to the elements from which it temporarily emerged. This completion through dissolution isn't failure, but fulfillment. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you open yourself to the poetic dimensions of shortness. You can create your life with the same devotion and attention as the mandala maker, knowing its eventual dissolution is part of its beauty. This way of seeing transforms your relationship to endings of all kinds, revealing their essential role in the poetry of existence. You begin to recognize that nothing would have meaning without its opposite, in silence, in absence, in forgetting. The alchemy of acceptance. Accepting that you will be forgotten transforms the heavy lead of existential dread into the gold of present awareness. This alchemical acceptance doesn't happen in your mind, but through a gradual felt recognition. It begins as an uncomfortable truth that we resist, yet through contemplation becomes a source of unexpected freedom. What first appears as loss reveals itself as gain, as space cleared for authentic living. This transformation isn't immediate, but unfolds gradually as the implications of forgetting sink from mind to heart. The process resembles grief in its stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. Many never reach this final stage, remaining trapped in bargaining, trying to negotiate a limited immortality through achievement or reproduction. Yet those who complete the journey find a quality of presence unavailable to those still running from the reality of shortness. True acceptance isn't resignation or defeat, but a deep realignment of values and attention. It's not that you stop caring, but that you start caring about what truly matters, the quality of conscious experience available only now. This alchemical shift can't be forced or rushed, but emerges naturally from honest thinking about your temporary nature. The more deeply you understand that you will be forgotten, the more completely you can be present. The inheritance of anonymity. Most of what we value in civilization comes to us from people whose names we'll never know. The inventors of the wheel, of written language, of counting, of cooking with fire, all anonymous helpers. Our most basic technologies and cultural practices came not from individual genius, but from collective intelligence across generations. The greatest gifts to humanity have been passed down without signatures. This anonymous inheritance reminds us that impact and remembrance often exist in opposite proportion. The more basic the contribution, the more likely it is to become common property, separated from its creators. Think about language itself. maybe humanity's greatest creation, a masterpiece with no single author. Its brilliance lies precisely in its ownerless nature, its availability to all without credit or recognition. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you join this noble tradition of anonymous contributors to human flourishing. Your acts of kindness, your small discoveries, your moments of creation feed into the collective inheritance without needing your name attached. This participation in anonymous giving may be the most deep form of contribution, one that asks nothing in return, not even remembrance. You become part of the invisible foundation upon which all visible human achievement rests. The futility of fame. Fame, our culture's promise of extended remembrance, delivers far less than it advertises. Those who achieve it often find themselves more isolated, more misunderstood than they were in obscurity. The famous person becomes a screen onto which others project their own desires and judgments, losing authentic connection. They're remembered not as they are, but as others need them to be, their actual selfhood buried under projection. Think about how fame turns even the living into symbols, flattening their complexity into easily consumed stories. The famous exist mainly as constructs in the minds of strangers, rarely as full human beings. Is this remembrance, this reduction to symbol, really what we want when we fear being forgotten? Maybe what we truly seek is not to be remembered, but to be known, to be witnessed in our full humanity. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you release the pursuit of this hollow immortality of fame. You can seek instead the deeper satisfaction of being truly known by a few rather than falsely remembered by many. This shift in desire from breadth to depth of connection often leads to a life of greater authenticity and joy. The love of one person who sees you clearly may be worth more than the admiration of millions who see only a construct. The wisdom of trees. Think about the quiet wisdom of trees, which seasonally release their leaves without resistance or regret. They don't cling to past growth, but let it go, making space for new growth when the time comes. This natural cycle of growth, release, and renewal contains deep wisdom for human consciousness. Maybe we too could learn to release our attachments to past selves, accomplishments, and the desire to be remembered. Trees contribute to the forest ecosystem even after death, their decomposing trunks nurturing new life. They don't disappear, but transform, their elements reconfigured into new growth. This cycle offers a different model of continuation than the straight immortality humans often seek. It suggests that our truest continuation lies not in being remembered as we were, but in becoming part of what comes after. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you align yourself with this natural wisdom of cyclical transformation. You recognize that your contributions to the world continue not through memory, but through their blending into the ongoing flow of life. This way of seeing brings a deep ecological comfort, a sense of belonging to processes much larger than individual identity. You participate fully in the great cycle of generation, contribution, and release that characterizes all natural systems. The liberation of letting go. Our fear of being forgotten reflects a deeper attachment to fixed identity, to the illusion of permanent selfhood. We cling to the story of who we are, seeking its continuation beyond our physical existence. Yet this clinging creates a basic suffering, a resistance to the natural flow of shortness that characterizes all things. Maybe our greatest freedom lies not in being remembered, but in releasing the need for continuous identity. Think about how much energy is used up by maintaining and projecting a consistent self-image. We carefully manage our presentation to others, making sure it fits with our previous expressions. This consistency requires constant watching, a perpetual self-monitoring that prevents authentic response to the present moment. The burden of maintaining this persistent identity extends into our concern for reputation after death. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you practice the basic spiritual art of letting go. You release not just the need for future remembrance, but the rigid self-definition that underlies it. This freedom allows for greater spontaneity, authenticity, and presence in your remaining time. You become available to continuous transformation rather than fixed identity, to becoming rather than being. The horizon of being. Our existence has a horizon, a limit beyond which we can't see or control. Death forms one obvious boundary, but forgetting makes another, equally significant horizon. Beyond this second horizon, our influence continues in ways we can't see or direct. Like light traveling through space long after its source has been put out, our actions spread beyond our awareness. This horizon of influence extends far beyond the horizon of remembrance. People may forget your name while still being shaped by your actions, words, and creations. A kind word spoken to a child might change their development without them ever remembering who spoke it. An idea shared might transform understanding without its origin being recalled. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you acknowledge this horizon while recognizing that impact goes beyond memory. You contribute to the future knowing you won't be credited, like dropping stones into water without seeing their distant ripples. This way of seeing allows for a more generous relationship to influence, one unconcerned with recognition or control. You give without attachment to outcome, content to know that effects continue beyond the horizon of both your seeing and your remembrance. The paradox of legacy. Those who most desperately try to create a lasting legacy often produce the least lasting work. Their focus on future judgment prevents the authentic expression that might actually speak to future generations. Think about how many forgotten monuments litter the landscape, built by those determined to be remembered. Meanwhile, works created for immediate purposes often outlast their creators' expectations. This paradox of legacy suggests that meaningful continuation comes not from grasping, but from letting go. The artist deeply absorbed in their craft rather than its reception often creates work of lasting significance. The parent focused on their child's present needs rather than creating a dynasty often establishes the strongest continuation. Impact flows not from demanding remembrance, but from full engagement with present purpose. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you resolve this paradox through surrender. You create, build, teach, or nurture for the true value of the activity, not its memorial potential. This non-attachment, paradoxically, increases the likelihood that what you create will have lasting value. You access a quality of authenticity available only to those who have released the need for approval after death. The economy of attention. Human attention is our most precious and limited resource, more valuable than time or money. How we spend this finite resource determines the quality and character of our lives. Yet much of our attention is eaten up by concerns about how we appear to others, both now and in the imagined future. This preoccupation with image and legacy takes away enormous attentional resources from direct experience. Think about how often your thoughts drift to how current actions will be seen rather than to the actions themselves. This divided attention prevents full presence, creating a perpetual state of partial engagement with life. Even seemingly immersive experiences can be contaminated by the documenting mind, always framing the present for future remembrance. We live as if our primary purpose were to create evidence of having lived. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can take back this wasted attentional wealth.
You become free to invest your full attention in direct experience, rather than its documentation or reception. This reallocation represents maybe the greatest available increase in life quality, a transformation of every experience through complete presence. You discover that attention fully invested in the present multiplies in value, creating a richness unavailable to the perpetually distracted mind.
Maybe our deepest kinship with others lies not in what makes us exceptional, but in what makes us temporary. Think about how the acknowledgement of mortality often dissolves artificial boundaries between people. In moments of crisis or grief, surface differences fade as basic human connection emerges. The recognition that we're all subject to the same cosmic laws of emergence and dissolution creates a natural compassion. We see in others not competitors for limited immortality, but fellow travelers on a brief journey. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you access this closeness of shared shortness. You recognize others not as witnesses to your significance, but as companions in temporary existence. This shift creates the possibility for more authentic connection, unburdened by the need to impress or secure remembrance. You become available for a quality of relationship possible only between those who have made peace with their temporary nature. The gift of obscurity. Think about the special freedom available to those who create without an audience, who act without witnesses. There's a purity in private creation and authenticity in actions performed beyond the gaze of others. The unpublished poet, the basement musician, the solitary dancer all access a dimension of expression unavailable under observation. Their art serves no purpose beyond itself, existing for the experience of creation rather than its reception. This freedom of obscurity extends beyond creative pursuits to all areas of life. Private joy, unwitnessed kindness, solitary contemplation all have a special quality precisely because they make no claim on memory. They exist completely in their moment of occurrence, asking nothing of the future. Maybe the most authentic expressions of your true nature emerge when you've released the need for recognition entirely. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can access this gift of obscurity during your lifetime. You become free to explore, create, and act from inner motivation rather than for outside validation. This freedom often unleashes capacities and expressions previously held back by the concern for reception. You discover that creation without the burden of legacy has a special lightness and authenticity that remembered work often lacks. The ecology of memory. Human memory, both individual and collective, works as an ecosystem with limited capacity. For new memories to form, old ones must fade, creating the necessary space for fresh experience. This natural process of forgetting isn't a failure, but an essential feature of healthy brain functioning. Without it, we would be crushed under the piled-up weight of remembered experience. This ecology of memory extends to cultural remembrance as well. For new cultural expressions to emerge, old ones must step back from active engagement. No culture could stay vital if it maintained equal attention to every expression from its past. The continuous clearing of attention allows for cultural renewal and adaptation to changing circumstances. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you recognize your place in this natural ecology of remembrance. You understand that your fading from memory makes space for new life, new creation, new understanding. This recognition allows you to see forgetting not as erasure, but as participation in the ongoing renewal of consciousness. You contribute to the future precisely by not taking up space in its memory, by making room for what needs to emerge. The Museum of Memory. Imagine human culture as a vast museum with limited gallery space. For new exhibits to be displayed, others must be moved to storage or removed entirely. No matter how vast the museum, choices must be made about what remains in public view and what steps back from attention. These curatorial decisions are unavoidable given the constraints of space and attention. The contents of this museum change continuously as each generation's curators make different selections. What one era considers essential to remember, another may view as irrelevant. No permanent place in the galleries can be secured through any action or achievement. Even the most prominent exhibits eventually make way for new acquisitions. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you release the desperate desire for permanent exhibition in this museum of cultural memory. You recognize that your temporary display, if it occurs at all, is enough. This acceptance frees you from the suffering caused by craving immortality through remembrance. You become content with your brief moment in the light, knowing that your removal makes space for others to be seen. The freedom of finitude. Our temporary limitations, including both death and forgetting, create the conditions for meaningful human existence. Without these boundaries, experience would lose its preciousness, its special intensity. Think about how endless time would drain urgency from action, how guaranteed remembrance would cheapen contribution. It's precisely our brief, forgettable nature that makes each moment potentially significant. Infinite existence and permanent remembrance, far from being desirable, would likely lead to a kind of living death. Without the pressure of limited time and the freedom of eventual forgetting, we might never act decisively or authentically. Our temporary constraints force choices, create focus, and establish priorities that give shape to human life. They transform mere duration into biography, mere persistence into character. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you embrace the freedom that finitude provides. You recognize temporary limitation not as a curse, but as the very condition that makes meaningful action possible. This acceptance allows you to see the extraordinary gift of bounded existence, the opportunity to craft significance precisely because your time is limited and your remembrance temporary. You discover that meaning emerges not despite, but because of your eventual disappearance from memory. The whisper of reality. Reality speaks most clearly in whispers, in subtle experiences that resist documentation and sharing. The most deep truths are often the most difficult to preserve in memory or communication. Think about your moments of deepest insight, connection, or presence, how they resist capture in words or images. These essential experiences seem to evaporate upon attempt to grasp or preserve them.
Maybe this resistant quality reveals something basic about the nature of meaningful experience. It suggests that reality in its purest form is meant to be met directly rather than preserved. The attempt to secure these experiences for the future often destroys precisely what made them valuable. Their essence lies in their immediacy, their ungraspable presence. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you align yourself with this whispered truth of reality. You stop trying to capture experience for transmission and begin to receive it more fully as it occurs. This shift from preservation to presence often reveals dimensions of experience previously missed in the effort to remember. You discover that reality offers itself most completely to those who have stopped trying to possess it beyond its moment. The mirage of digital immortality. Modern technology offers new promises of extended remembrance through digital preservation. We archive our thoughts, images, and expressions online, imagining them permanently accessible to future generations. Yet this digital persistence is itself an illusion, vulnerable to technological obsolescence, data corruption, and the sheer volume of competing information. The digital afterlife proves just as short-lived as previous forms of remembrance, only with different timescales and failure modes. Think about how many early digital formats are already inaccessible, how many once popular platforms abandoned.
The permanence promised by digital tools requires continuous maintenance and migration that rarely happens. Even if your digital traces survive technically, they'll disappear practically beneath the ever-rising tide of new information. Your carefully preserved expressions will become effectively invisible, lost in an endless ocean of content. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can use digital tools without being fooled by their promises of immortality. You can share and connect in the present without the illusion that these traces make up meaningful continuity. This clear-eyed approach to technology allows for its authentic use as a means of present connection rather than future preservation. You discover that digital expression, like all human communication, finds its truest value in immediate reception rather than permanent record. The mirror of mortality. Our awareness of mortality and eventual forgetting can serve as a clarifying mirror, revealing what truly matters. This mirror, when faced directly, shows the difference between essential and unnecessary concerns with brutal clarity. Think about how quickly priorities shift when faced with limited time, how petty grievances and status concerns suddenly appear meaningless. The same clarification occurs when we truly take in our eventual disappearance from memory. This mirror of mortality reveals not just what matters, but who we are beyond social masks and achievements.
It strips away the piled-up identities we construct, leaving only our essential nature. Maybe our truest self emerges only when we've released all concern for how we'll be remembered. In this letting go, we discover what remains when the temporary construction of social identity falls away. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can use this mirror regularly rather than avoiding its reflection. This practice gradually aligns your life with what you truly value, rather than with what others might remember. You discover that many pursuits fall away under this scrutiny, leaving space for what genuinely matters to your deepest self.
The currency of experience. In the economy of a finite life, experience is the only true currency. Not accomplishment, not possessions, not memory, but the quality of conscious awareness as it unfolds. This is the one value that can't be transferred, banked, or preserved beyond its moment of occurrence. It exists only in its immediate showing, making it both the most short-lived and most real asset we possess. Think about how much of this precious currency is wasted in pursuit of substitute values, status, security, recognition. We trade present experience for symbolic substitutes that ultimately can't satisfy our deeper needs. The hope of being remembered often motivates this exchange, as we sacrifice immediate richness for imagined future significance. Yet no amount of recognition after death can make up for a life of divided attention and delayed presence. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can invest your experiential currency more wisely. You stop spending present awareness on future remembrance that will never provide adequate return. This reallocation of your most precious resource often creates an immediate increase in life satisfaction. You discover that experience fully received in the moment provides wealth that no amount of remembrance could match. The gift of insignificance. There's a special lightness available to those who recognize their cosmic insignificance. This recognition, far from being depressing, can free us from the crushing weight of self-importance. Think about how exhausting it is to maintain the fiction that your existence has cosmic significance, that your actions ripple meaningfully through eternity. This burden of imagined importance creates a perpetual pressure that prevents natural unfolding. From the view of geological time, let alone cosmic time, all human striving appears equally momentary. The distinction between famous and forgotten becomes meaningless against the backdrop of billions of years. This radical equalization of all human lives can be experienced as either terrifying or freeing, depending on how deeply it's understood. When fully blended in, it creates a buoyant freedom unavailable to those still striving for significant remembrance. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you receive this gift of insignificance with gratitude rather than resistance. You experience the freedom that comes from releasing the need to matter beyond your moment. This acceptance, paradoxically, increases your capacity for joy, presence, and meaning within the brief span you have. You discover that insignificance, embraced fully, transforms from existential threat to unexpected blessing. The quantum of presence. Presence comes in indivisible units, complete moments of undivided attention. It can't be partially achieved or multitasked. Either consciousness is fully here or it's elsewhere. Think about how rarely we experience this undivided state, how often our attention is split between present experience and thoughts of past or future. This division creates a perpetually watered-down quality of awareness that prevents full engagement with life. The concern for how we'll be remembered makes up one of the most common diversions from presence. It pulls attention from direct experience into imagined future views of the present moment. This split consciousness creates the strange phenomenon of living as if already looking back, experiencing now as if from a future vantage point. We become spectators to our own lives, commentating rather than experiencing. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you remove one of the primary barriers to complete presence. You release the habitual division between experience and its imagined future remembrance. This unification of attention creates access to a quality of consciousness ordinarily available only in rare moments of flow or meditation. You discover that undivided presence makes up a form of wealth unavailable to those still striving to secure their place in memory. The meditation of mortality. Thinking about your eventual forgetting makes up a form of meditation with transformative potential. Like traditional memento mori practices, it uses death awareness to clarify values and priorities. Yet it goes beyond physical mortality to consider the complete dissolution of your social identity, your remembered self. This extended contemplation often reveals attachments and fears normally hidden from awareness. This meditation becomes most powerful when practiced not intellectually, but experientially. Rather than thinking about being forgotten, you imaginatively live in that reality, feeling its implications. You visualize a world where no one remembers your name, where all trace of your passing has disappeared. As resistance to this vision arises, you observe it with compassionate attention, neither indulging nor holding back the fear. With regular practice, this meditation gradually transforms your relationship to remembrance and identity. Initial terror often gives way to acceptance and eventually to a sense of freedom. The meditation continues working even when not actively practiced, quietly restructuring your values and perception. You discover that what first appeared as a terrifying void gradually reveals itself as free space for authentic living. The Phoenix Principle. For new life to emerge, the old must be completely consumed, transformed through dissolution. This principle operates throughout nature, from forest fires that release seeds requiring extreme heat to sprout. Think about how the nutrients of previous generations become the literal substance of new growth. Nothing is truly lost, but rather reconfigured into fresh forms of life and consciousness. This Phoenix Principle suggests a model of continuation very different from being remembered as we were. It points to transformation rather than preservation as the natural mode of influence across time. Maybe your truest continuation lies not in being remembered as a fixed identity, but in becoming raw material for what comes after. Your ideas, actions, and creations decompose like fallen leaves, releasing their nutrients to nourish new growth. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you align yourself with this natural process of transformation. You release the desire to preserve your current form and memory, allowing for complete conversion into new life. This surrender to transformative dissolution often brings deep ecological comfort. You discover that influence without remembrance, like nutrients without source recognition, may be the most deep form of continuation. The ethics of inheritance. What we leave behind isn't primarily our names, but the effects of our choices on those who follow. This ethical inheritance operates independently of remembrance, shaping future possibilities regardless of attribution. Think about how decisions made by unnamed ancestors continue to structure your life through institutions, technologies, and altered landscapes. Their influence persists not through memory, but through transformed material conditions. This way of seeing shifts focus from symbolic to substantial inheritance, from remembrance to consequence. This ethical reorientation often leads to more considerate decision-making, concerned with actual impact rather than perceived legacy. The desire for good remembrance can be replaced by the more meaningful desire for beneficial effect. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can focus on creating a beneficial inheritance regardless of attribution. You become free to invest in changes that may not be traced to you, but will nonetheless improve conditions for those who follow. This shift from named to anonymous contribution often increases both the scale and quality of your impact. You discover that influence without credit may be the purest form of giving to the future. The liberation from judgment. Our concern for how we'll be remembered often reflects anxiety about judgment after death. We want not just to be remembered, but to be remembered well, approved of by history. This concern for judgment extends beyond the grave, creating a kind of eternal performance anxiety. We live as if perpetually on trial before an imagined future jury. Think about how this anticipated judgment constrains authentic expression and action. We edit our lives according to imagined future standards and values that we can't possibly predict. This creates a strange time confusion where present choices are governed by speculative future criteria. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you release yourself from this judgment after death anxiety. You recognize that no future tribunal will evaluate your choices because your choices will be unknown. This freedom from anticipated judgment creates space for more authentic decision-making based on present understanding. You discover that moral clarity emerges more readily when freed from the distorting influence of imagined future opinion. The authenticity of anonymity. Something special happens to human expression when the possibility of credit or blame is removed. An authenticity emerges that's often absent from signed or attributed communication. Think about the different quality of anonymous donations, unsigned graffiti art, or messages in bottles set adrift. These expressions often have a purity and directness missing from work created with attribution in mind. This authenticity of anonymous expression suggests a relationship between ego attachment and distortion. When we create with our names attached, we inevitably filter our expression through concerns about how it'll reflect on us. This filtering process, while sometimes helpful for quality control, often removes the most original and vulnerable aspects of our communication. We say what we think we should say rather than what we truly wish to express. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can access this quality of anonymous authenticity even in your signed work. You create as if your name were already detached from your expression, freeing it from the distortion of ego protection. This approach often releases capacities for originality and vulnerability previously held back by reputational concerns. You discover that your most powerful expressions emerge when you've released all concern for how they might reflect on your remembered self. The poverty of posterity. The imagined audience of the future is a poor substitute for genuine human connection. Creating for future remembrance rather than present communication often leads to work that connects deeply with neither. Think about how many monuments feel cold and impersonal compared to things created for immediate use and enjoyment. The latter, paradoxically, often speak more clearly across time precisely because they were embedded in real human relationship. This poverty of posterity as audience extends to all forms of human expression and action. Work created primarily to secure remembrance often lacks the vitality of work created from present necessity or desire. The teacher who teaches to transform lives now, rather than to be remembered as a great educator, often achieves both aims, while the one focused on legacy often achieves neither. Present impact and future memory maintain this opposite relationship across areas. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can create for real people rather than imagined future generations. You communicate with those actually available to receive your expression, not with theoretical future audiences. This grounding and present relationship often fills your work with an authenticity and immediacy that paradoxically gives it lasting value. You discover that the path to meaningful impact often passes through complete surrender of concern for remembrance. The joy of recognition. When we release the need for future remembrance, we become available to a deeper form of recognition. Not recognition of our names or accomplishments, but recognition of our essential nature by those who truly see us. Think about the deep satisfaction of being understood by even one person, of having your inner reality acknowledged. This immediate recognition contains a value that no amount of fame after death could replicate. This joy of recognition operates independently of scale, sometimes more powerfully in intimate settings than public ones. The understanding glance of a friend who knows you well can provide more satisfaction than applause from thousands who know only your public self. Maybe what we truly seek is not to be remembered by many, but to be recognized by a few. Not continuation of our names, but confirmation that our personal reality was witnessed and understood. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can redirect your desire for recognition toward this more fulfilling immediate form. You can seek the joy of being seen now rather than remembered later. This reorientation often leads to deeper investment in present relationships and more authentic self-expression. You discover that the satisfaction of being truly known by a few during your lifetime far outweighs the hollow promise of being nominally remembered by many afterward. The wisdom of humility. True humility emerges not from putting yourself down, but from accurate self-perception within the vastness of existence. It's simply the recognition of your actual size and significance in the cosmic context. Think about how our expected remembrance requires a grossly inflated sense of our importance relative to the billions of other humans who have lived. This inflation distorts perception and creates unnecessary suffering when reality fails to match our oversized expectations. Humility in this sense doesn't lessen, but clarifies your unique value and contribution. It removes the distortion of imagined cosmic significance, revealing your actual precious specificity. This right sizing of self-perception often brings immediate relief from the burden of keeping up an inflated self-image. The exhausting effort to secure immortality through remembrance can be released into a more grounded sense of purpose. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you grow this wisdom of humility as a daily practice. You continuously adjust your self-perception to more accurately reflect your temporary, limited, but genuinely valuable nature. This practice gradually transforms your relationship to achievement, failure, praise, and criticism. You discover that humility, far from lessening your capabilities, enhances them by removing the distorting influence of ego protection and inflation. The eternal present. Maybe eternity isn't endless time, but timelessness, the complete living in the now. This eternal present becomes available precisely when we release concern for continuation. Think about how moments of complete presence often contain a quality of timelessness, an escape from the usual experience of duration. These moments, paradoxically, emerge most readily when we've accepted our temporary nature, rather than trying to go beyond it. This eternal present represents not an extension, but a deepening of experience, a vertical rather than horizontal immortality. It suggests that the richest continuation lies not in being remembered across time, but in accessing the timeless dimension available within each moment. Maybe what we truly seek in wanting to be remembered is this quality of significance that exists outside of straight time. If so, the path lies not in securing memory, but in deepening presence. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you clear the primary barrier to experiencing this eternal present. You stop sacrificing depth of now for imagined breadth of continuation. This reprioritization often reveals dimensions of experience previously hidden by time anxiety. You discover that eternity isn't something to be attained after death through remembrance, but something to be experienced during life through presence. The courage of impermanence. True courage may lie not in building monuments, but in creating beauty that will disappear. It takes greater bravery to invest fully in the temporary than to grasp for artificial permanence. Think about the ice sculptor who works knowing their creation will melt, or the mandala maker who plans its destruction from the beginning. These artists show a special courage in their wholehearted commitment to the short-lived. This courage of shortness extends beyond art to relationships, experiences, and life itself. It requires strength to love fully knowing loss is unavoidable, to celebrate moments that can't be preserved. Maybe the greatest act of courage is to live with complete presence and commitment while accepting the temporary nature of all experience. This paradoxical combination of full engagement and non-attachment represents a deep spiritual achievement. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you develop this rare form of courage. You become capable of creating, connecting, and experiencing without the safety net of remembrance. This courageous acceptance often unleashes capacities for joy and meaning previously held back by insecurity. You discover that vulnerability to total erasure, embraced fully, transforms from weakness into strength. The weight of memory. Memory itself can become a burden, both individually and collectively. The piling up of the past can grow so heavy that it prevents movement into the future. Think about cultures paralyzed by remembrance of ancient glories or grievances, unable to adapt to changing conditions. Their attachment to being remembered in certain ways limits their ability to evolve and respond. This burden extends to personal memory as well, where past achievements or failures can overshadow present possibilities. We become prisoners of our remembered selves, unable to act in ways inconsistent with established identity. The weight of our personal history limits spontaneity and authentic response to current circumstances. We sacrifice present possibility on the altar of consistency with our remembered past. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you can begin releasing this weight during your lifetime. You become free to reinvent yourself continuously without concern for consistent story. This freedom from the burden of piled-up identity often brings unexpected vitality and creative possibility.
you discover that forgetting, both of yourself and by others, creates essential space for renewal and transformation. The mathematics of memory. Think about the mathematics of memory across human generations and cosmic time. If each human is remembered by at most 2 generations beyond their death, even the famous disappear within a few centuries. The sheer volume of human lives makes sure that complete remembrance is impossible. For each person remembered, countless others must be forgotten simply due to the limits of collective attention. This mathematics becomes even more stark against cosmic timescales. Human civilization takes up an infinitesimal slice of universal time, our entire species a mere eye blink in cosmic history. The probability of any individual human being remembered after the extinction of our species approaches 0. Even if our civilization were to continue for millions of years, the likelihood of your specific remembrance would still be mathematically tiny. By accepting that you will be forgotten, you align yourself with this mathematical reality rather than fighting against it. You acknowledge the natural limits of remembrance without resentment or despair. This acceptance often brings a strange comfort, a sense of rightness in conforming to the natural patterns of existence. You discover that what appears first as harsh truth gradually reveals itself as cosmic belonging, a participation in patterns larger than individual identity. Maybe the greatest happiness comes not from people remembering us, but from knowing we helped make things better. This happiness doesn't need anyone to know we did it. It comes from making a difference, not from getting credit. Think about how good it feels to help someone without them knowing who helped them. This happy feeling happens with all kinds of help, sharing ideas, supporting others, and creating beautiful things. A teacher feels it when old students use what they learned, even if they forgot who taught them. An artist feels it when people enjoy their work without knowing the artist's name. A parent knows it when their children's children live by good values, even though they never met them. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can feel this joy of pure giving. You help without expecting credit or even to be remembered. You find happiness in the helping itself.
This generous giving, without wanting anything back, often lets you make the biggest positive difference. You learn that helping without caring if people remember you might be the most meaningful way to make the world better. Our wish to be remembered shows a deeper mistake, thinking we own our achievements and who we are. We say, my life, my work, my impact, as if these things belong only to us. But everything we achieve comes from countless other people and things we didn't control or create. Our ability to do anything depends on language, knowledge, technology, and opportunities we inherited from others. This mistake of thinking we own things ignores how all human creation happens together. Nothing is truly mine to be remembered for, because everything has fingerprints from countless other people on it. Even our most personal words depend on language we didn't invent and ideas that came from others. The self that wants to be remembered is itself created by many people through countless interactions and inheritances. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you start letting go of this ownership mistake. You see achievements not as things you own, but as moments when you channeled what all humans can do together. This understanding often brings a deep feeling of connection and thankfulness, replacing worry about being remembered. You learn that being part of the great flow of human creativity matters more than owning a piece of it that people remember. Being forgotten gives us a final privacy, a return to the mysterious unknown we came from. After people stop remembering us, we escape being defined and judged. We return to endless possibility. Think about how being remembered always makes us smaller and simpler than we really were. To be forgotten is to be released from this shrinking. We return to the fullness of who we really were without anyone's interpretation. This final privacy doesn't mean being erased. It means freedom from the limits of how others understood us. The remembered self is always a construction, a character in other people's stories, not the real experience of living. Maybe what we fear about being forgotten isn't disappearing, but losing this familiar construction, this known but limited identity. But in this loss is the chance to return to uncategorized essence, to being rather than seeming. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can look forward to this final privacy with curiosity instead of fear. You see it not as punishment, but as release from the limits of having a defined identity. This acceptance often brings quiet joy, a sense of eventually coming home to unconditioned being. You learn that beyond the apparent loss of being forgotten is the deep gain of returning to mystery. Our influence continues in ways separate from people remembering our names or who we are. Like tiny particles that affect systems without being directly seen, we shape the future anonymously. Think about how a kind act might change someone's life without them remembering where it came from. The effect continues regardless of whether it's connected to us, sometimes more powerfully than effects linked to remembered sources.
This quantum influence works through complex chains of cause and effect beyond our tracking or control. Your actions create ripples that interact with countless other ripples to shape future conditions. The help you give someone might enable their support of another, creating effects 3 or 4 or 50 generations away from your first action. These threads of cause and effect stay connected even as memory of where they started disappears. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can focus on creating positive influence instead of making sure people know it came from you. You contribute to the great web of causes without needing to tag your threads with your name. This shift from credited to quantum influence often expands your impact by removing the limits of needing recognition. You learn that cause and effect continue even where memory fails, creating a form of continuation independent of being remembered. Think about trees. They drop their leaves on the forest floor without signing them or wanting credit. These unsigned gifts become the very soil from which new life grows, transformed beyond recognition. The tree doesn't demand that its leaves be remembered as coming from it specifically. It participates in cycles of growth and decay without caring about individual credit. This wisdom of giving without credit runs throughout the natural world. Rivers don't sign the oceans they feed. Clouds don't tag the rain they release. These natural processes suggest a model of influence very different from our human concern with remembered credit. They point to transformation rather than preservation as the natural way of continuing. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you align yourself with this basic pattern of nature. You become like the tree, happy to give without signature to what comes after. This natural alignment often brings deep comfort from feeling part of nature, a sense of participating in ancient patterns. You learn that forgetting is not a human cruelty, but part of nature's wisdom, essential to renewal and continuation. What we think is permanent just operates on timescales too long for us to see directly. Everything from mountain ranges to star systems exist in continuous processes of change. Think about how even the longest-lasting human monuments show the effects of time when observed closely. The pyramids themselves slowly wear away, their precise angles softened by thousands of years of wind and sand. This universal impermanence creates the context for human forgetting, placing it within natural patterns. Our social memory is no more permanent than our physical structures, subject to similar processes of wearing away. Names carved in stone fade, just as the stone itself gradually returns to sand.
Digital records become corrupted or outdated, their storage systems subject to the same physical laws of decay. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you recognize your place within these universal patterns of change. You stop fighting against a basic quality of existence itself. This acceptance often brings peace through cosmic understanding, through seeing human forgetting as one instance of universal impermanence. You learn that what looked like human failure reveals itself as cosmic process, neither cruel nor kind, but simply the nature of reality. Maybe true completion comes not through endless continuation, but through wholehearted acceptance of ending. Like a well-crafted story, a life may find its meaning precisely in having a conclusion. Think about how the beauty of music depends on silence, on notes not continuing forever, but finding resolution. The ending gives meaning to what came before, creating a whole rather than an endless sequence. This beauty of completion suggests that being forgotten might be not a failure, but a necessary final note. Without this ending, the composition of a life remains unfinished, suspended in artificial continuation. The acceptance of forgetting provides the closing notes that transform individual moments into a complete composition. It creates the silence that allows the music to be heard as a whole rather than an ongoing process. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you open yourself to this freedom of completion. You become available to the specific beauty of having an end that infinity cannot access. This acceptance often brings a special kind of satisfaction, the sense of participating in a well-crafted whole rather than an endless series. You learn that meaning emerges not despite, but through the acceptance of conclusion, of forgetting as the final resolution of your life's composition. Absence itself can be a gift, creating space for what needs to emerge. Like silence between musical notes, forgetting creates the necessary gaps for new creation. Think about how creativity often requires emptiness, a clearing of accumulated patterns and expectations. Innovation emerges not from crowded memory, but from spaces where previous structures have been partially forgotten. This gift of absence works at cultural as well as individual levels. Societies experience creative renaissances when freed from the weight of remembered traditions. New art forms emerge when old forms fade enough from active memory to allow experimentation. The partial forgetting of rules and boundaries creates the conditions for their productive breaking. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you offer this gift of absence to future generations. You contribute to necessary clearing, making space for what they need to create. This generosity toward the unborn often brings unexpected satisfaction in the present. You learn that giving through absence, through not occupying future attention, may be as valuable as giving through continued presence. Forgetting is not an unnatural tragedy, but part of the basic pattern of existence. Like death itself, it represents not failure, but completion of a natural cycle. Think about how continuous remembrance would create an unnatural state, an accumulation without release. Such eternal preservation would prevent the renewal essential to living systems. This natural cycle works in individual memory as well as collective remembrance. Our minds continuously forget to make space for new learning and experience. Without this necessary clearing, we would be unable to adapt to changing circumstances or integrate new information. The persistence of every memory would create thinking paralysis rather than better functioning. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you recognize your place within natural cycles of renewal. You participate consciously in patterns of emergence and dissolution essential to all life. This alignment with natural process often brings deep comfort from feeling part of nature. You learn that forgetting, far from opposing nature, represents one expression of its fundamental wisdom. Our influence works through mysterious channels, independent of conscious remembrance. Ideas, values, and patterns of behavior pass between generations through pathways we barely understand. Think about how you might use phrases or gestures inherited from great-grandparents you never met. Their influence continues anonymously, shaping you without your awareness of its source. This mystery extends beyond families to entire cultures, where origin points disappear while influences persist. Languages evolve through contributions from countless forgotten individuals. Musical traditions develop through innovations whose creators' names have vanished. The most profound and widespread influences often work precisely through this mysterious, anonymous continuation. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you open yourself to participation in this mystery. You contribute to ongoing human development without needing to tag your specific influences. This anonymous participation often brings a special satisfaction unavailable to those still grasping for credited remembrance. You learn that mysterious influence, separated from your name and identity, may be your most significant and lasting contribution. The pursuit of remembrance can become a trap, distorting decisions and diminishing life quality. We sacrifice present joy for imagined future recognition that rarely happens as we picture it. Think about how many people realize too late that their quest for legacy led them to miss what truly mattered. They discover on their deathbeds that relationships neglected for achievement leave the greater emptiness. This trap works with special power in creative fields, where concern for posterity can paralyze authentic expression. The writer who creates for imagined future readers often produces less vital work than one who writes from present necessity. The artist who works for the gallery wall or the museum display frequently loses the raw authenticity that might actually merit such placement. The paradox of legacy is that those who pursue it most directly are often least likely to achieve it. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you free yourself from this common trap. You create, build, and connect for present value rather than posthumous recognition. This liberation often unleashes abilities previously held back by legacy anxiety. You learn that acceptance of forgetting, far from diminishing achievement, often enhances it by removing artificial limits on authentic expression. In forgetting lies a final equality that goes beyond all differences in achievement or recognition. No matter how famous in life, all eventually fade to equal obscurity in cosmic time. Think about how even the most famous historical figures become progressively distant, their details blurring and importance fading. Given enough time, even the greatest names become footnotes and finally disappear completely. This equality of ultimate forgetting offers a profound cosmic justice going beyond temporary human hierarchies. The pharaoh and the slave, the conqueror and the conquered reach the same state of non-remembrance. All human striving for superior recognition eventually resolves into this shared anonymity. What seemed like vast differences in remembrance are revealed as temporary variations in a universal process. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you align yourself with this ultimate equality. You recognize the temporary nature of all status differences based on remembrance. This recognition often brings a special humility and compassion toward others still striving for superior recognition. You learn that shared forgetting creates a bond of common destiny that goes beyond all temporary differences in fame or obscurity. There exists a special freedom in anonymity, in action without credit. When no one knows who is responsible, we act from inner rather than outer motivation. Think about the different quality of behavior when we believe no one is watching or will remember. This absence of observation often allows for more real expression, not held back by concern for reception. This freedom extends beyond immediate anonymity to eventual forgotten status. When we fully accept that all our actions will eventually become authorless, we gain similar liberation. The pressure of performing for posterity dissolves, releasing energy for genuine response to present circumstances. We become available to act from core values rather than concern for how we will be remembered. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can access this freedom of anonymity during your lifetime. You act as if already anonymous, concerned with impact rather than credit. This shift often releases unexpected creativity and authenticity previously suppressed by reputation concerns. You learn that forgotten status, embraced in advance, creates a special kind of freedom unavailable to those still struggling for remembered recognition. Even if you are temporarily remembered, that remembrance will inevitably distort who you actually were. Memory, both individual and collective, reconstructs rather than reproduces the past. Think about how historical figures become caricatures, reduced to a few traits or achievements that rarely capture their lived complexity. Even those who knew you personally will remember a version of you that differs from your experienced reality. This distortion reveals a basic limitation in the project of being accurately remembered. Not only will remembrance fade, but while it lasts, it will misrepresent. The you that others recall will never match the you that you experienced yourself. This gap between lived experience and remembered construction cannot be bridged by any amount of documentation or testimony. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you also release the desire for accurate remembrance. You recognize the inevitable distortion in even the most loving memory of you. This double acceptance of both forgetting and distortion often brings unexpected peace. You learn that true continuation lies not in accurate memory, but in honest impact, in how you transform others regardless of whether they remember the source of transformation. Memory and forgetting exist not as opposites, but as partners in a necessary dance. Each requires the other to create meaning and enable growth. Think about how creativity emerges from the active interaction between remembered patterns and their partial forgetting. Without some forgetting, memory becomes rigid. Without some memory, forgetting becomes chaotic. This partnership suggests that forgetting serves essential functions rather than simply opposing remembrance. It creates space for new patterns, prevents oversaturation, and enables selective preservation of what proves most valuable. Maybe forgetting is not the failure of memory, but its sophisticated partner in meaning-making. Without it, memory would lose its selective power and thus its value. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you recognize your participation in this necessary dance. You contribute to both remembering and forgetting as complementary cosmic processes. This recognition often transforms resistance to forgetting into appreciation for its essential role. You learn that being forgotten is not failure or tragedy, but participation in the rhythm that gives remembrance itself its meaning. Though your name and identity will fade, the elements that made you up continue indefinitely. The atoms that temporarily assembled into your form will reassemble into countless future forms. Think about how the carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen currently making up your body have previously been part of countless other beings. They have been stars, oceans, dinosaurs, plants, and will continue their journey long after your temporary arrangement dissolves. This material continuity offers a different model of continuation than remembered identity. Rather than persistence of name or story, it suggests persistence through transformation and recombination. Your physical elements will continue to participate in the great dance of matter and energy, taking new forms over billions of years. In this sense, what appears as ending is merely reorganization, the beginning of new configurations. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can shift focus to this elemental continuity. You recognize your body as a temporary arrangement of eternal components. This recognition often brings deep comfort through cosmic understanding. You learn that forgetting of identity happens alongside material continuity, offering a form of immortality very different from the persistence of name or story. Maybe the greatest gift of accepting forgetting is the renewal of wonder in ordinary existence. When we release the need for cosmic importance, the simple miracle of being here at all comes into focus. Think about how our desperate pursuit of remembrance often blinds us to the amazing improbability of our current existence. We take for granted the extraordinary fact of conscious experience, while anxiously seeking its continuity. This renewed wonder extends to all aspects of ordinary life, suddenly perceived as miraculous. The taste of food, the feeling of sunlight, the sound of voices, all become extraordinary when seen without the distortion of legacy anxiety. Even difficult experiences gain a strange preciousness when recognized as temporary manifestations of consciousness. Pain itself becomes interesting rather than merely bad when experienced with full presence. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you clear the primary barrier to this perpetual wonder. You stop taking existence for granted in your desperate attempts to extend it through memory. This shift often transforms ordinary experience from background to foreground, from means to end. You learn that each moment, when fully received without concern for its preservation, reveals dimensions of wonder previously hidden by anxiety about remembrance. Accepting that you will be forgotten extends a special invitation to playfulness and experimentation. When legacy concerns dissolve, the serious business of securing remembrance can be replaced by play. Think about how children, unconcerned with how they will be remembered, access states of complete absorption and joy. Their temporary creations, built without concern for permanence, often contain a vitality missing from adult work. This invitation to play extends to all areas of adult life: work, relationships, creativity. When freed from the burden of creating a memorable legacy, these areas can become fields for genuine experimentation. The professional who stops building a resume and starts solving interesting problems often produces more important work. The artist who abandons the pursuit of lasting fame for the play of creation often creates more vital art. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can respond to this invitation to playful living. You approach each area with experimental curiosity rather than legacy anxiety. This shift often unleashes abilities for creativity and problem-solving previously held back by seriousness about remembrance. You learn that playfulness, far from opposing achievement, often enables its highest expressions precisely by releasing concern for how achievements will be remembered. Maybe the only true value lies in the quality of conscious experience itself. Not its duration, not its remembrance, but its depth and richness in each moment it exists. Think about how a single moment of deep presence might contain more value than years of divided attention. The former creates a depth of experience that needs no continuation to justify its worth. This inherent value of consciousness exists independently of its recognition or remembrance. It requires no witness beyond itself to establish its worth. A moment of joy, insight, or connection has value simply in its occurrence, regardless of whether anyone remembers it afterward. The experience itself is a complete value, needing no external validation. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can focus on this inherent value of conscious experience. You invest in depth rather than duration, in quality rather than remembrance. This change in priorities often transforms ordinary moments by removing the distraction of legacy concern. You learn that when attention is not divided between experience and its preservation, a single moment can contain more value than years of half-lived time. Shared awareness of impermanence creates a special closeness between conscious beings. Knowing that both we and others will be forgotten generates a tender recognition of common vulnerability. Think about how acknowledging mortality often dissolves artificial boundaries between people. In the face of shared transience, our basic kinship becomes more apparent than our differences. This closeness extends beyond human relationships to connection with all temporary things. The cherry blossom, the sunset, the passing season, all become kin in their shared impermanence. Maybe our deepest bond with reality lies not in what persists, but in what passes, in our common participation in emergence and dissolution. This recognition of kinship with the transient often generates a special tenderness toward all temporary things. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you access this closeness of shared impermanence. You recognize your basic kinship with all that passes. This recognition often transforms relationships through the special vulnerability it enables. You learn that acknowledging shared forgetting creates possibilities for connection unavailable to those still defending against impermanence. A special lightness comes from releasing the burden of being remembered. The weight of potential judgment by posterity lifts, allowing more spontaneous movement through life. Think about how much energy is consumed by managing potential future opinions of us. We continuously edit our actions and expressions with an eye toward how they might be seen by imagined future audiences. This lightness extends beyond social performance to our internal relationship with ourselves. The need to construct and maintain a self worthy of remembrance creates considerable psychological weight. When this requirement dissolves, we become free to explore aspects of experience previously deemed incompatible with our rememberable identity. The rigid structures of consistent selfhood can relax into more fluid and responsive patterns. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you access this lightness of unburdened being. You release the weight of performing for posterity's judgment. This unburdening often creates immediate increases in energy, creativity, and joy. You learn that what appeared as existential terror, being forgotten, reveals itself as unexpected liberation when fully accepted. True wisdom may emerge precisely from recognizing your cosmic insignificance, not as cause for despair, but as context for more accurate self-perception and value assessment. Think about how many philosophical traditions point toward this recognition as the beginning of genuine understanding. From Socratic acknowledgement of ignorance to Buddhist anatta, wisdom often begins with recognizing what and who we are not. This wisdom of insignificance does not diminish but clarifies your actual value and meaning. By releasing inflated cosmic importance, you can discover your genuine significance within appropriate scale. Maybe your true value lies not in universal remembrance, but in the difference you make to specific beings during your brief shared time. This right-sized significance often proves more satisfying than grand but hollow notions of legacy. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you open yourself to this basic wisdom. You continuously adjust your self-perception to more accurately reflect your temporary, limited, but genuinely valuable nature. This practice gradually transforms your relationship to success, failure, praise, and criticism. You learn that accurate self-perception, far from diminishing your abilities, enhances them by removing distorting influences. Maybe the most precious quality of existence is not its extension, but its being limited. The limited nature of conscious experience creates its special intensity and importance. Think about how scarcity in other areas, rare elements, limited editions, brief seasonal availability, increases perceived value. The temporary nature of your existence works similarly, creating preciousness through limitation. This appreciation extends beyond the limited nature of physical life to the temporary nature of remembrance. Being eventually forgotten adds another dimension of scarcity that potentially enhances meaning. Maybe the brief period during which you are remembered by those who knew you personally holds special importance precisely because of its temporary nature. Like seasonal blossoms, this limited period of remembrance may get its beauty from its brevity. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can develop this appreciation for the finite nature of all experience. You recognize limitation not as obstacle to meaning, but as its very condition. This recognition often transforms resistance to temporal boundaries into gratitude for their role in creating importance. You learn that forgetting, like death itself, does not oppose meaning, but establishes the context within which meaning becomes possible. Maybe our most authentic way of being acknowledges rather than denies our temporal nature. This authenticity emerges from alignment with, rather than resistance to, our actual condition. Think about how much energy is consumed by maintaining the fiction of permanence through legacy. This effort distorts our relationship to time, placing primary value in an imagined future rather than lived present. This authenticity of temporal being extends beyond individual psychology to our relationships and projects. When we acknowledge the temporary nature of all connections and creations, we relate to them more honestly. The relationship embraced for its present value rather than its permanent status often achieves greater depth. The project undertaken for its inherent worth rather than its lasting impact often attains greater integrity. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you align yourself with the authentic temporality of human existence. You stop fighting against your actual condition and start living in accordance with it. This alignment often resolves the subtle but persistent discomfort that comes from maintaining fiction against reality. You learn that authenticity emerges not from securing remembrance, but from honest acknowledgement of its temporary nature. What if being forgotten is not punishment, but gift? Not failure, but grace, the final release from the burden of persistent identity. Think about how exhausting it would be to maintain consistent selfhood for eternity. The continuous effort of coherent self-presentation would become a kind of hell rather than the heaven we imagine in eternal remembrance. This gift of transience extends beyond personal psychology to collective well-being. Imagine the stagnation of a culture unable to forget its past patterns and personalities. Such a society would become increasingly burdened by accumulated memory, unable to evolve new responses to changing conditions. The gift of forgetting creates essential space for renewal at both individual and cultural levels. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can recognize this gift in advance. You see forgetting not as future punishment, but as eventual liberation. This reframing often transforms relationship to legacy from anxious grasping to grateful release. You learn that what appeared as existential threat reveals itself as cosmic grace when viewed from sufficient perspective. Special liberation comes from embracing your basic ordinariness, not as resignation, but as recognition of kinship with the vast majority of beings who have lived and been forgotten. Think about the egotism in believing your remembrance should be exceptional when billions have been forgotten. This expectation of special treatment creates unnecessary suffering when reality inevitably disappoints it. This freedom of ordinariness extends beyond legacy concerns to all areas of life. When we release the need for exceptional status, we become available to the genuine value of common experience. The ordinary meal, conversation, or day contains richness invisible to those continuously seeking the extraordinary. Paradoxically, embracing ordinariness often reveals the extraordinary dimensions of supposedly common experience. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you embrace your basic kinship with ordinary humanity. You release the exhausting pursuit of exceptional remembrance. This acceptance often brings immediate relief from the burden of specialness. You learn that ordinary forgotten status, accepted fully, creates more freedom for authentic living than the continuous striving for exceptional remembrance. Being forgotten represents not mere negation, but potential return to uncategorized essence. Not disappearance, but reabsorption into the unstructured potential from which we temporarily emerged. Think about how defining and remembering always involves reduction, the transformation of ineffable being into conceptual categories. To be forgotten is to be released from these reductions, returned to uncategorized possibility. This return to essence suggests a completion rather than interruption of life's journey. Like a river returning to the ocean, individual identity dissolves back into the source from which it arose. Maybe this dissolution is not loss, but homecoming, the resolution of temporary separation into original wholeness. The cycle completes not through eternal preservation of separation, but through its eventual dissolution. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can look forward to this return with curiosity rather than dread. You see it not as erasure, but as completion, as return rather than end. This reframing often transforms relationship to forgetting from resistance to acceptance or even welcome. You learn that what appeared as loss may actually be gain, the recovery of original wholeness beyond the limitations of defined identity. Maybe selfhood exists not as continuous thing, but as series of separate moments. Not a persistent thing, but a sequence of experiences conventionally unified through narrative. Think about how our sense of continuous identity requires elaborate story construction, connecting separate experiences into coherent story. This story, though useful for practical purposes, misrepresents the actual quantum nature of consciousness. This quantum perspective suggests that being forgotten merely acknowledges what is already true. The continuous self we imagine being remembered never actually existed as such. It was always a useful fiction, a narrative overlay on separate experiences lacking inherent connection. Forgetting simply allows this fiction to dissolve, revealing the quantum nature of experience it temporarily concealed. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you align yourself with this quantum reality of selfhood. You recognize the constructed nature of continuous identity requiring remembrance. This recognition often brings liberation from the burden of maintaining narrative coherence. You learn that forgetting, far from opposing your true nature, actually reveals it by removing the fictional overlay of continuous selfhood. All remembrance works within a limited system of attention with necessary trade-offs. For someone to be remembered, countless others must be forgotten due to limited mental resources. Think about how even within a single life, the sharp remembrance of certain experiences requires the forgetting of others. Memory functions through selection rather than accumulation, forgetting the majority to preserve the minority. This system extends to cultural memory, where similar limitations require selective preservation. No culture could function while maintaining equal attention to every person and event from its past. The preservation of certain names and stories requires the forgetting of others, not through malice but through thinking necessity. What we call history represents not comprehensive record but highly selective curation. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you recognize your place within this natural system of attention. You acknowledge the necessary limits that make remembrance itself possible. This recognition often brings compassion toward the systems of memory that cannot possibly preserve everyone. You learn that forgetting represents not failure, but participation in the selective process that enables memory itself to function. A strange paradox works in the relationship between seeking legacy and achieving it. Those most desperate to be remembered often do things that diminish their chances. Think about how preoccupation with legacy often produces self-conscious work lacking the authenticity that creates lasting impact. The artist who creates primarily to secure remembrance rarely produces work memorable enough to achieve it. This paradox extends beyond creative fields to all areas of human achievement. The leader focused primarily on historical judgment often makes worse decisions than one focused on present needs. The scientist concerned mainly with naming discoveries miss the collaborative insights that create genuine breakthrough. Throughout human endeavor, concern with remembrance often undermines the very qualities that might merit it. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you position yourself on the productive side of this paradox. You create, lead, or discover without the distorting influence of legacy anxiety. This freedom from concern with remembrance often unleashes precisely the authentic engagement that creates meaningful impact. You learn that letting go of being remembered, paradoxically, often produces work more worthy of remembrance. Maybe the greatest courage lies not in fighting against forgetting, but in fully accepting it. Not as resignation, but as clear-eyed recognition of reality requiring significant bravery to face. Think about how much easier it is to maintain comforting illusions of legacy than to confront the mathematical certainty of eventual erasure. The latter requires a courage rarely acknowledged, but deeply transformative when embodied. This courage creates possibility for a life of genuine presence rather than continuous performance. When we stop acting for imagined future audiences, authentic response to present circumstances becomes possible. The person who has accepted forgetting brings a different quality to their actions, more direct, more honest, less concerned with appearance. This directness often creates more important impact than carefully managed behaviors designed to secure remembrance. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you practice this quiet but deep form of courage. You face what most spend their lives avoiding and find unexpected freedom in that confrontation. This courageous acceptance often transforms not just relationship to legacy, but to all aspects of existence. You learn that the courage to accept forgetting develops capacity for radical presence that enriches every dimension of experience. Think about how burdensome it would be to actually achieve the eternal remembrance so many desire. The pressure of perpetual judgment, the inability to evolve beyond fixed image. Famous figures often speak of the prison their public image creates, the exhaustion of maintaining consistent presentation. This burden extends infinitely in the imagined scenario of eternal remembrance.
This weight would bind not just the remembered, but those who remember. The obligation to maintain memories of the dead creates duty that can prevent full engagement with the present. Cultures excessively focused on ancestor remembrance often struggle with innovation and adaptation. The living can become prisoners of the remembered dead, their attention and energy consumed by maintenance of memory. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you spare both yourself and others this weight. You release yourself from the burden of consistent presentation and others from the obligation of remembrance. This mutual unburdening often creates immediate increases in freedom and energy. You learn that forgetting represents not failure but liberation, the release of resources for new growth rather than perpetual preservation. Our identities exist not as isolated things, but as elements in complex relational systems. Not separate entities, but nodes in continuously evolving networks of relationship. Think about how your sense of self emerges through interaction with others, environment, and culture.
It does not exist independently, but as temporary manifestation of these intersecting influences. This ecological perspective suggests that being forgotten is not erasure, but transformation. The influences that temporarily formed as you continue in altered form throughout the system. Like nutrients cycling through ecological networks, the elements of your identity continue circulation in different configurations. What appears as disappearance from one perspective represents reconfiguration from another. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you align yourself with this ecological understanding of identity. You recognize yourself as temporary manifestation of ongoing processes rather than separate thing requiring preservation. This recognition often brings deep ecological comfort and sense of belonging. You learn that forgetting represents not destruction, but participation in natural cycles of emergence and reconfiguration essential to all living systems. Maybe meaning exists most authentically within the horizon of a single life, independent of remembrance. Not as legacy project, but as lived coherence, as pattern perceived by the experiencing consciousness itself. Think about how we find importance in connections and themes visible from our unique vantage point. These patterns of meaning require no external validation or preservation to justify their value. This horizon of personal meaning works independently of legacy timeframes. It finds importance in relationships and experiences complete within lived experience. The love between parent and child needs no remembrance beyond their lifetimes to justify its deep meaning. The insight that transforms understanding requires no historical record to validate its importance to the one who experienced it. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can focus on meaning within this natural horizon. You invest in patterns of importance visible from your unique vantage point, without requiring their eternal preservation. This investment often yields deeper satisfaction than pursuit of remembrance-dependent meaning. You learn that meaning contained within the horizon of lived experience often proves more reliable and substantial than meaning dependent on posthumous recognition. Maybe time should be measured by depth rather than duration, by intensity rather than extension. Not how long something lasts, but how fully it is experienced in each moment of its existence. Think about how a single moment of complete presence might contain more lived time than years of divided attention. This quality of time experience works independently of clock time or calendar duration. This qualitative approach to time transforms the importance of being forgotten. If what matters is depth rather than duration, the eventual fading of memory becomes less threatening. The value of experience comes from its lived intensity, not its extension through remembrance. A life of deep presence needs no posthumous continuation to justify its worth. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can shift focus from time extension to time depth. You invest in the vertical dimension of time, intensity, presence, completeness, rather than the horizontal dimension of continuation. This change in priorities often transforms ordinary experience by removing the distraction of legacy concerns. You learn that a single moment fully lived contains more value than centuries of thin remembrance. History itself can become a prison, binding us to patterns and expectations from the past. The dream of being remembered often represents desire to join our jailers rather than escape the prison. Think about how historical stories limit possibility, defining what can be imagined based on what has been recorded. To be forgotten is to be released from these limits, returned to open possibility. This liberation extends beyond individual psychology to collective evolution. Cultures partially forget in order to evolve, releasing patterns that no longer serve current needs. The continuous clearing of memory creates space essential for adaptation and innovation. Without this liberation from history through partial forgetting, both individuals and societies would become increasingly rigid and unresponsive. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you participate consciously in this necessary liberation. You recognize forgetting not as failure, but as an essential part of healthy development. This recognition often transforms relationship to both personal and cultural history. You learn that being forgotten represents not exclusion from history, but contribution to the vital processes of renewal that prevent history from becoming a prison. Our desire to be remembered reflects a deeper assumption that we own our identities and achievements. This ownership claim extends beyond death through the vehicle of remembrance. Think about how strange this notion of posthumous ownership actually is when examined closely. How can the non-existent own anything, including memory of their previous existence? This fallacy of ownership extends to ideas, creations, and influences given credit to individuals. The reality of all human achievement involves countless forgotten contributors and conditions. The identified creator or discoverer represents merely the visible node in vast networks of influence. What we call individual achievement always emerges from collective processes largely invisible in conventional credit. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you begin releasing this fallacy of ownership. You recognize achievements not as personal possessions, but as temporary configurations you helped catalyze. This recognition often brings deep humility and gratitude, replacing anxiety about proper credit. You learn that release from the ownership fallacy through acceptance of forgetting creates greater freedom for genuine contribution, unconstrained by credit concerns. Obscurity itself can be a precious gift, creating freedom unavailable to the closely observed. Not as punishment, but as protection from the distorting influence of external judgment. Think about how public figures often speak with nostalgia about the freedom they experienced before fame. This liberty to experiment, fail, and evolve without documentation provides essential space for authentic development. This gift works not just during life, but in relationship to posthumous remembrance. To be forgotten after death extends similar protection from judgment by those who could not possibly understand your full context. It allows your actions and creations to be received on their own terms rather than filtered through stories about their creator. The work can speak for itself without the distorting influence of biographical interpretation. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you receive this gift in advance. You create with the freedom of expected obscurity rather than the limit of imagined remembrance. This advanced reception often unleashes abilities for authenticity previously held back by legacy concerns. You learn that the gift of obscurity, embraced consciously, creates greater freedom for meaningful contribution than the pursuit of remembered recognition. Maybe our deepest fulfillment comes not from being remembered, but from experiencing wholeness. Not fragmented by concern for reception, but complete in each moment of existence. Think about how presence unifies the divided self, bringing separate aspects of being into temporary harmony. This experience of integration needs no continuation beyond its moment to justify its deep value. This wholeness of being exists independently of external validation or remembrance. It comes from internal coherence rather than social recognition or posthumous reputation.
The sense of rightness that comes from aligning action with deepest values requires no witness to establish its worth. It is complete in itself, needing no continuation through memory to justify its importance. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you remove a primary barrier to experiencing this wholeness. You stop dividing attention between present experience and concern for future remembrance. This unification often brings immediate increases in well-being and sense of meaning. You learn that wholeness of being in each moment, not remembrance across time, is your deepest fulfillment. Maybe the greatest gift of conscious existence is participation in the basic mystery of being, not as problem to be solved, but as wonder to be experienced. Think about how our obsession with remembrance often takes attention away from the amazing fact of existence itself. We take for granted the miracle of consciousness while anxiously seeking its extension. This mystery does not require solution or preservation, but simply recognition and appreciation. It invites wonder rather than explanation, presence rather than continuation. PR points towards mystery that goes beyond individual identity or remembrance. To exist at all, even temporarily, is to participate in this basic puzzle of existence. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can redirect attention to this primary mystery. You stop distracting yourself with secondary concerns about remembrance. This shift in attention often reveals dimensions of experience previously hidden by legacy anxiety. You learn that participation in the mystery of being, even briefly and forgettably, offers fulfillment that no amount of remembrance could provide.
Throughout nature, letting go appears not as failure, but as essential wisdom. Not defeat, but completion, the necessary conclusion to cycles of growth and development. Think about how trees release their leaves in autumn, how rivers release their waters to the sea. These natural processes of letting go enable renewal and continuation rather than preventing them. This wisdom extends to human development, where growth requires continuous release of previous states. The child must be partially forgotten for the adult to emerge. The adult must be partially forgotten for the elder to evolve. Each stage of development involves both preservation and forgetting, selective continuation and necessary release. Without this wisdom of letting go, developmental processes would stagnate in rigid preservation. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you align yourself with this basic wisdom of nature. You recognize forgetting not as tragedy, but as necessary completion of natural cycles. This alignment often brings deep comfort from feeling part of nature and a sense of rightness. You learn that being forgotten represents not failure or punishment, but participation in the ancient wisdom of letting go that fills all natural systems. Maybe being forgotten represents not disappearance, but return to the unmanifest source from which we temporarily emerged. Not extinction, but completion of a journey from formlessness to form and back again. Think about how many wisdom traditions describe cycles of manifestation and dissolution as natural cosmic process. Individual identity appears temporarily from unstructured potential and eventually returns to it. This return completes rather than interrupts the cycle of existence. Like a wave returning to the ocean, differentiated identity dissolves back into its source. The wave does not stop existing, but returns to the undifferentiated state from which it arose. Similarly, the forgetting of individual identity represents not destruction, but reabsorption into original wholeness. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can recognize this return as completion rather than interruption. You see forgetting not as failure, but as natural conclusion to the cycle of manifested identity. This recognition often brings deep spiritual comfort and sense of cosmic belonging. You learn that forgetting represents not punishment or tragedy, but the necessary completion of your journey from and back to source. Maybe our greatest freedom lies in choosing where to invest our limited attention. Not in controlling outcomes, but in directing awareness toward what we truly value. Think about how much attention is consumed by managing how we appear to others, including imagined future others. This management takes away enormous resources from direct experience of what actually matters to us. This freedom of attention becomes possible when we release concern for how we will be remembered.
The energy previously invested in legacy management becomes available for direct engagement with life. We stop performing for posterity and start experiencing for ourselves. This shift from presentation to presence often transforms ordinary experience by removing the filter of legacy concern. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you liberate attention for investment in present value. You redirect thinking and emotional resources from future reception to current experience. This reallocation often creates immediate increases in life quality through deeper engagement. You learn that the freedom to direct attention toward what truly matters to you, regardless of how it will be remembered, is your greatest available liberation. Maybe life is less a journey toward destination than a dance to be performed with full presence. Not progress toward future goal, but continuous creative response to present music. Think about how dancers focus not on documentation of their performance, but on its execution. Their art exists in its momentary embodiment rather than its preservation. This metaphor of dance suggests a different measure of life's value than remembrance. What matters is not whether the dance is recorded, but how fully it is performed. The quality of attention, responsiveness, and presence in each movement matters more than its documentation. A dance performed with complete absorption needs no audience or record to justify its worth. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can approach life as dance rather than monument building. You focus on the quality of your movement through time rather than its preservation in memory. This shift often transforms relationship to both ordinary and extraordinary experiences. You learn that life as dance, fully performed but eventually forgotten, offers fulfillment that no amount of remembrance could provide. Maybe eternity exists not as endless time, but as the depth dimension available within each moment. Not horizontal extension, but vertical penetration, the infinity accessible through complete presence. Think about how moments of full awareness often contain a quality of timelessness, an escape from the usual experience of duration. These moments, paradoxically, emerge most readily when we have accepted our temporal nature, rather than fighting against it. This vertical eternity requires no continuation through memory to establish its value. It is complete in itself, containing depths that go beyond ordinary time measurement. Maybe what we truly seek in wanting to be remembered is this quality of importance that exists outside linear time. If so, the path lies not in securing remembrance, but in accessing the depth dimension of present experience. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you remove the primary barrier to experiencing this now of eternity. You stop sacrificing vertical depth for horizontal extension through remembrance. This change in priorities often reveals dimensions of existence previously hidden by legacy anxiety. You learn that eternity is available not through being remembered across time, but through penetrating the infinite depth available within each moment. Think about the special freedom available to those who create without signature, who act without claiming credit. This anonymity allows for pure expression, not held back by consistency with previous identity. The anonymous creator accesses dimensions of authenticity often unavailable to those concerned with credit. Their work emerges from necessity rather than ego, from inner rather than outer motivation. This gift extends beyond artistic creation to all areas of human action and relationship. The help offered without recognition often contains a purity missing from more visible giving. The insight shared without credit frequently transmits more effectively than claimed wisdom.
Throughout human experience, anonymity creates possibilities for authenticity that credit often limits. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you can access this gift of anonymity during your lifetime. You create and contribute as if already anonymous, concerned with inherent value rather than credit. This advanced anonymity often unleashes abilities for authenticity previously held back by identity maintenance. You learn that forgotten status, embraced in advance, creates freedom for expression and action unavailable to those still struggling for remembered recognition. In the final analysis, maybe now is all that ever exists or has inherent value. Not past, not future, but the continuously unfolding present moment of conscious experience. Think about how both memory and anticipation exist only as present phenomena, as current mental events. The past exists only as remembered now. The future exists only as imagined now. This eternal now perspective transforms the importance of being forgotten. If only present consciousness has primary reality, remembrance represents merely one possible content of future present moments. The value of your existence comes not from future mental events referencing you, but from the quality of consciousness you experience directly. What matters is not whether you occupy space in others' future awareness, but how fully you inhabit your own present awareness. When you accept that you will be forgotten, you align yourself with this basic truth of the eternal now. You invest in the only reality directly available to you, present conscious experience. This alignment often resolves the subtle but persistent suffering created by focusing on imagined futures rather than actual present. You learn that the eternal now, fully inhabited regardless of future remembrance, offers fulfillment that no amount of posthumous recognition could provide.